kind of character, or we can find a kind of archetype, let's say, of the rural god of Pan, who signifies the meaning of the word all in Greek. Thus becoming a symbol, Pan becoming a symbol and personification of nature and the universe, the all, the everything, the entirety, or the totality in all of this. We can come to see that Nietzsche's claim, which becomes interesting here, because Nietzsche's claim of the death of God, in some sense, recalls for the rebirth of Pan, who never truly died, as it was C.G. Chesterton who claimed that the death of Pan was the advent of theology, which is very interesting here. And what he said was the following: It is said truly in a sense that Pan died because Christ was born. It is almost as true in another sense that men knew that Christ was born because Pan was already dead. A void was made by the vanishing world of the whole mythology of mankind, which would have asphyxiated like a vacuum if it had not been filled with theology. End quote. So this is where you could say theology replaces the vacuum left behind from the death of Pan, or mythology in totality, because mythology represented the all of the different life-affirming mythos within Greek mythological poetry or Homeric poetry. So from a Nietzschean perspective, you could claim that this is when the body is completely rejected from life. The life-affirming mythos of pre-Socratic Greece, Homeric poetry, the Olympians, the Roman religions, etc., is replaced by theology, which rejects the body and instincts to create a psychologically, in all honesty, and mentally inappropriate way of living, which is to craft the future orientation of man in the years to come, which would be an out-of-body metaphysics, high religious cosmologies, and moral laws whereby the mind or soul is theologically, philosophically separated from the body, which then influences the moral structure. And this is obviously the criticism of Nietzsche against Christianity, or institutional Christianity, by seeing its effects played upon the institutions later on in the future of the religion, and is the fundamental basis to what theology is this rationalized, jargonized, contemplative method to try and understand religion outside of the body and outside of the instincts, in relation to a higher order that is more transcendental than what can be found when the soul and the body are initiated into one singular form. And of course, Pan was then used in a propagandic way by Christianity to condemn the old evil world, which is seen through the depictions of Satan and all of this. The reason why this realization is extremely relevant today in many ways is because most things that are being put into place are systems of priestly, conceptual concept and theory that only want to obscure the reality towards a particular direction of control that diverts away from the reality that people crave and desire through the body. The truth is the body, if you will, because the body is all the instincts and feelings of the world that can be experienced between you and yourself and other people. Thus, the priestly world of thought, in my view, that tries to restrict life through its own lens, has to use propaganda. And propaganda only works through the mind. It only has to go through the mind for it to work, and the mind in the priestly conception to restrict people by anxieties and develop fears and conceptual ideas of what reality truly is when it isn't. And that's what propaganda does and how it functions. So propaganda works through concept and theory of so-called truth. Thus, if people are already based in that reality to begin with, or have been entrained to live within that perspective of reality, then they are more likely to accept the propaganda of illusional ideas because they are contained inside that bubble and narrative that supports it. So we can reapply this today, this entire Pan-like, or this rebirth of Pan idea that is so necessary from the response of the death of God that Nietzsche proclaimed during his life. that what is needed and what brings people happiness and smiles is to live through the body in its entirety in a bacchanalian way, if you will, in this instance of how I see things in development of society right now and of today. And one example of this was when thousands or maybe even a couple of million people were protesting in London last weekend. There was music, people were smiling, having fun, drinking, raving, dancing to music, enjoying themselves, having smiles on their face, and interacting with people, as that is what humanity is all about. And people loved it, and it made them feel alive, and that activation in of itself is a realization, or is the realization that the body is the only thing that holds any truth of the world and your relation to the world, if you will. The feeling and emotions that rise up into the body to express themselves in their own animated way without suppression. That is what the ultimate truth of reality is. It's through experience with the body. And if you or anything else focuses on the suppression or any form of that emotional possession of the gods that lives within you, then life is going to be made numb through the possession of theory, which is propaganda in this sense, and the anxiety that inevitably comes with it, which causes people to be overcome by the fear of an illusion or of propaganda, which then allows processes to be put in place whereby people will accept and follow the forced undemocratic rules. That is to say, for example, for QR codes, for example, that was recently announced today, or whenever you're watching this, for example, to be made mandatory to enter into any shop in Australia, for example. So even though Nietzsche claimed something like the death of God, and religious people would see this as, oh, this is negative, he's pronouncing this reality that is very nihilistic, or is very pessimistic, and something which forces people to exist in a type of worldview that is negative. It should not be seen in that negative frame of mind, but instead see it in a positive frame, whereby it demands from as many people as possible in this moment of today the rebirth or initiation of Pan in a new way for today and the future, the rebirth of an all-grounded philosophy based on the spiritualization of bodily instinct, and then from there, when it needs to, it can develop on from other things into a further form of heroism and self-responsibility and discipline by avoiding complete Dionysian hedonism, if you will, but realizing an asceticism through the spiritual or transcendent element that can be found within it.